I assume it would probably be like a wall mount or from the ceiling, like up in the ceiling area.
Yeah, the situation I believe here that is convenient is that the roof access. It's on the second floor, so you could have a compressor unit on the roof and do it that way. That's my understanding for not a tremendous amount of money.
Correct. And the second part of the health area, this is a bathroom that's in the nurse's office. There are two. This would not necessarily create a hallway to access the bathroom in 223. It's really putting a hole in the back side of the bathroom wall so it can be accessed from the hallway. Right now, the middle school has limited bathroom access. We don't have a gender neutral bathroom in that area. And the nurse's office does have two. So we would end up blocking off this side of the bathroom and opening up the wall on the other side. So we'd have a more accessible bathroom for students in the middle school section.
Right. So it does a few things. It creates a private bathroom for the nurse's office. It creates a gender neutral unisex bathroom in that area. And it also, the way the bathrooms are situated in the middle school, they're on the bottom floor on far ends of the building. And this would provide much needed quicker access for staff to use the restroom during that 3-minute passing time period, which can become very short at times, you know, when needed. So it really is three reasons, and it's all about creating a successful clinic. But it does bring up those other benefits as well.
Okay. The locker mechanisms for the middle school. So the majority of the lockers, these are pictures. You can see that the mechanisms are rotting around, rusting around the edge. There's a picture here of a locker that doesn't even close. So this would be not replacing our lockers, but actually our custodian, we would purchase the mechanisms for all the middle school lockers, and the custodians would be replacing the mechanisms on all the lockers for the middle school. And you can see from the pictures that, you know, they're weathered, they're aging. And like I said, a lot of them don't work. A lot of the students aren't even using them because they don't work.
Yeah, I'd say a third to a half.
And do they just not lock, or do they occasionally lock and not open?
Both.
Okay.
Right.
That's
Why are you replacing all of them if half of them still work?
Well, I think we're going to go and look at which I don't know if it's all of them. It's the ones that don't work.
Right.
That was our estimate for that.
Okay.
It's a good portion of them. I wouldn't say
Right.
all.
So you're replacing the ones that have failed rather than
Yes.
replacing every one, that even if it's still working.
Correct.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no need to replace the ones that aren't working. Although, you know, we just have to look at the age of them. Clearly, we're not, you know.
so let me play devil's advocate for a second, right? I assume they're decades old, right?
They are.
And we've got situations where kids close their lockers and then can't get in to get their books during the school day.
Yep.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense to at a surface level to just replace the ones that are broken, but it sounds like we're pretty much end of life across the entire group.
Sue, was this quote for all the lockers? Maybe I'm wrong.
My
I
understanding,
believe it was for almost all of them. Because
my understanding, and it may be wrong, but my understanding in from the walkthrough was that we were going to replace all of them. The number was 12.5. I mean,
I might stand corrected on that.
Yeah, we may have some differences of opinion at the committee level. I wouldn't be averse to replacing all of them just to get this dealt with, so that your custodians are not chasing this issue and you don't have kids in panic mode, on an exam day when they can't get into their locker.
Well, they're certainly old. There's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. And if they're not at the end of life, they will be soon. But
Yeah. I mean, if this was 125 grand or even 50 grand, I'd probably feel differently about it. But I don't know, to save $6 grand, it kind of feels, to me at least, and I apologize, Michael, for maybe seeing this a little differently. It feels like we should just fix them all or replace them all and be done with it for a couple decades.
Okay, so Brian, are we going to debate each line item? Or are we
We're
going
not going
to,
to vote on line items. I just sharing thoughts. But
well, it sounds like a debate. I mean, you're
okay.
you're
Well, we've
putting,
got 2 hours, so we can do whatever you like.
I think what I'd like to do is ask questions and not get into the pros and cons. The questions would be directed to the school committee and to Superintendent Sullivan.
Okay,
Um,
let's
And
continue
we'll
on
get
that
our
path.
answers, and then we will have a meeting where we are going to review all the different requests and then
Okay.
debate them.
So I think to that end, what we just clarified is the quote we believe is for the full for full replacement.
Great.
And I
Thank you.
apologize. My notes were wrong on that.
Yep, no, that's fine. The question's answered. We're good. Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion on this one? As I look at the picture, it seems pretty clear that there's a fair amount of rust beneath those lockers. And I think just replacing, and I hate to add things to this whole picture, but it looks to me as though someone will need to pay attention to doing something about the rust by just simply putting the new locks on the same old lockers. You're going to have a failure in a matter of a year or two. That looks really serious rust to me underneath the actual lock mechanism itself. If I were doing that, I would certainly ask to make sure that someone is out there with a piece of sandpaper and some paint and make sure that you're protecting the actual door itself, or otherwise the doors are going to need to be replaced almost as soon as you actually replace the lock mechanism. So that's just looking at your picture. So
Yep, I think you're absolutely
You're
right
right.
on.
Can I want to ask one question on this too before we move on? Have you assessed the lockers in the high school too? This is just for the middle school, it looks like. So I'm curious what the high school lockers look like if you've done an assessment for those.
We have, they're very bad. There's many of them are totally not working either. I'd say about the same state these are in.
But you're not asking for the high school right now?
Not at this point.
Okay. Okay.
Dr. Sullivan, I was always told by my kids that nobody uses the lockers in the high school because they don't really have time in between class to get there. And since they have laptops and stuff, they just carry them around.
Yeah, more kids are, that is accurate. And I'm not sure if it's causal from not having proper lockers that work, or it's just more of the system that they have bringing their books with them. But it was brought up by our leadership as more of a need at the middle school. And we're trying to be a bit conservative. We didn't put it up there as an item for the high school. Doesn't mean there isn't a need. Just to answer the question, there's a need.
But I think, to that point, you're right. I think when we had the conversation, high school principal was like, well, most of the kids don't, some use them, but most of them don't. They carry things, they've got their laptops, which is why we didn't include it and make it a priority. Not to say, like Dr. Sullivan said, that they're not in the same shape. I just think less high schoolers use them.
Remember, the middle school is also set in teams. So they have really team times when they can go to their lockers, and it's a little more, the kids are younger, so it's a lot more structured on when they use their lockers. So it's really part of the flow of the school day, more so than the high school. It's another reason. You can't have all these kids go to use their lockers and a third of them or half of them don't even lock. It becomes somewhat frustrating.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say that as a father of two high school kids, every morning when I check their bag, it weighs like, I don't know, it seems like 100 pounds that they're weighing on their back. So
Yep.
like, it's just, I wish they would use their locker, and that they just, shrug it off. Oh, Dad, it's no big deal. It's just, it can't be good for their backs. That's all I have to say.
So I seem to have lost my connection somewhere along the line, but I'm back. The quick question. do you actually want these lockers to lock in the future? I mean, certainly you want functioning lockers where you can open the doors, close the doors, they latch shut, but do you actually want them locked?
Yeah, the idea is to lock them to secure the items for our students. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious. I was thinking back to my own high school experience. We had lockers, they worked, but they did not have, functioning locks built into them.
Yeah, we didn't really discuss, that never came up as a discussion point. It was really just to lock them, the idea behind the locker is to keep items secure for the students. So it was always understood we would lock them.
Okay. The next one is our technology. So this is just the ongoing lease, the replacement of our aging Chromebooks, which is IT department, Ron Menard has, on a cycle, so 540 Chromebooks on a 3-year lease. The total was 143.52 per year. So this is, I believe, probably the 3rd year.
Yeah.
And how many years could you get out of them if you had to drop this line item? As far as the software is concerned and the connectivity.
Well, we know they can last longer than 5 years, but I think we look at it with the 5-year lifespan just because software gets out. The software updates monthly, sometimes yearly. So it's not that they're failing and not working. It's just they won't be up to date.
Okay, so this really is a question, I think, more for Ron.
Yes.
As far as being able to get some more life out of these. And it all goes to the software and the software that deals with virtual machines.
Right.
Okay, so I think we should put an asterisk on this one.
Well, I think this item, I believe, is part of an already ongoing lease. So it's not new.
Oh, so it's an end of lease?
It's
I
an
think it's the
existing
third, we
lease.
believe it's the 3rd year.
I
in the
believe
lease.
it's the 3rd year in the lease. So next year would be the question of, do we just roll these over and not ask for replacements next year? Or do we renew a lease?
Okay, so that's.
I think we actually own them at the end of the lease. I may be wrong, but I'm Susan, you may have a view on this.
No, I believe you're right. That's what I'm saying.
we
So
do.
we
Yeah.
definitely, next year, just use what we have.
Right.
And a good portion of them would probably, survive for another year or two after that.
So we Michael reviewed this pretty extensively on the last go round. So the original fleet, which I think we bought in like 2017, rolled off basically a year or two ago. The Chromebook that, and the problem really was a battery bloat issue. Each time that you recharge it, there's only so many recharges in the battery pack before the battery no longer fully recharges or holds its charge effectively. And
I recall that from last year, and
yeah,
we purchased new Chromebooks with the batteries that don't fail.
Correct. And this is that fleet of Chromebooks. We got them on a 3-year lease. So I agree with you. I think it was last year. I think we're in year 2, although this is all just subject to confirmation. We have the 3rd year after that, and then we own them outright. And, assuming that we don't run into another battery bloat issue, which was very model specific with the prior that we had, we could very well see, we should see at least 5 years, possibly even more. I will say that just anecdotally, I bought an Acer Chromebook when we were doing the digital learning project, right? Planning the whole thing out, figuring what to buy in terms of devices. So mine was a solid 12 to 18 months older than what ended up in the school fleet. And I just got, my, termination of future support notice from Acer that's going to happen this summer. So I think still runs beautifully. It's wicked fast. Haven't had a single issue with it. It's going on, 7 or 8 years old at this point. So because they don't have a hard drive in them, they really do last very long. So
Well, not only that, but the software is virtual.
correct,
So really, all it has to do is be able to connect through the LAN.
correct. Yeah. Basically, the battery can't die, the screen can't crack, and the keyboard still needs to work. And this thing should run for quite a while.
Right. So I think I'm confused then on how old these are and whether we need to replace them in FY23 or FY24.
We do not need to replace them. We need to pay the next year of the lease.
Well,
So-
the slide says replacement.
Yeah, that's not probably an accurate label.
Well, replacement of aging Chromebook. It's not aging. So could we get some answers, not tonight, but soon, on what is it that you really need?
So you're muted.
Sorry. Initially, it was replacement of our aging Chromebooks. I thought we were in the third year, but it might be that we're in our second year. So I just carried this slide over. We're not replacing anything. We already have these Chromebooks. We're just making the second or third year lease payment.
Wouldn't that be in your normal school budget?
No.
No, Michael, it's a purchase alternative.
Okay.
The only thing I'd weigh in
So
on.
if this is a
is-
3-year lease, but you're really talking about the next year of a lease, right? So
Correct.
again, things aren't lining up here on this for me. I'm sorry, Ralph, I interrupted you.
But that's okay. It was almost a oblique question, but I do think it really needs a Ron answer on this one. I think the question really often comes down to operating system and then security updates, which become critical at some point. So I don't know the right answer here as to why to replace them, but surely operating systems have to be updated rather periodically, but security updates are critical. And once the manufacturer says we're not going to do that anymore, then of course you can't keep them. But that's a question for Ron. I'm just raising the issues that typically have come up, as well as the battery questions. That's it.
I agree. I think we need more info from Ron,
Yeah.
and perhaps it would be Ron and Sue together that we can talk with.
Yeah, I agree. Go ahead, Sue.
The next item on the list is a middle high school paging zones. Our paging system at the middle and high school is outdated. Many of the zones are not working correctly or at all. It is important to be able to communicate through our paging system. So right now, because the zones aren't working, when they communicate, it communicates to everywhere in the middle and the high school. Some volumes are very, very low and you can't hear them. Some are very loud, but you can't designate, because the zone's not working. You can't just make an announcement at the middle school or at the high school. It's pretty much the whole building. So this is another one of Ron's, I shouldn't say Ron's ask, it's a school ask, but with Ron's support.
Well, the details in this, this real specific details as to what isn't working regarding the paging system would have to be answered by Ron. We just know what Sue said because we observe it, as do our as does our leadership.
Okay. I agree. That's definitely a question for Ron. Do you, just before we have that conversation with Ron, do you know, is this just an upgrade or is this a replacement of the system? What is this? Or is
I
that
think it's an upgrade. That's my understanding. It's not a full
Okay.
replacement. But again, I just want to defer to Ron on it.
okay, fair enough.
I mean, we did ask Ron to attend. He wasn't able, he had another arrangement today, so he couldn't make it with us.
But those are his two items that we can certainly double
Okay.
back on and give you guys information. It makes
We've-
sense.
We follow up with Ron regardless, so we can, we can try and include you when that happens.
Great, thank you. So the alumni field lights, I show some pictures here. You can see bulbs out, different color bulbs. Currently, the lights are very outdated and costly. Some do not work. Almost every light post out there is missing a few lights. We did try, facilities did go in, rent a boom or lift, as you call it, to go in and replace all those bulbs, but it did not fix anything. They found that it was something in the ballasts of each light. So it was a much bigger issue than just changing out the bulbs. And they also stated that, you know, the new lights would be more cost effective once we upgraded. So, you know, there's a couple pictures here. You can see the dip, some are out, some are on, some are different. There's another set, same thing. Some are green, some are white, some are yellow, some are out. They, like I said, they did go in just this past fall and replace or attempt to replace all the bulbs, and it didn't change anything. So it was a bigger problem.
So can you quantify what the cost savings is, you think, on an annual basis, or?
I could, I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay.
I mean, that would definitely be, you know, getting into how many, you know, how much usage it is over,
Yeah.
you know, how certain amount of time. But I mean, the company that we have doing lighting in the schools now would probably be, you know, a similar company, and they can do a cost analysis to tell us what the savings would be over a period of time.
So Francine, on the walkthrough, this question was asked of Nick, and it's not really driven by energy savings. It's driven by the lifespan of the new bulbs that will go in. It will not require them to be renting boom trucks and chasing burned out bulbs on any, you know, on any normal basis.
Right.
So that's where the savings comes from. It's you know, it's the replacement bulbs, it's the boom truck rental, and it's tying up the facility staff to go up and actually change them out.
Okay. The next one is our scoreboards. We focused more so on the alumni field scoreboard, which is pictured here, but all of our scoreboards need a little help. This is the original scoreboard that I think goes back to replaced in 1995. Scoreboard's outdated. It's lacking many of the new features needed for games. You know, you can see it's very limited to what it offers. It does not support certain sports like lacrosse and field hockey when there's penalty minutes or horns. It's hardwired rather than wireless. So it definitely needs a good facelift because it's not accommodating just, you know, lacrosse and field hockey are not new sports, but it can't accommodate what those sports need on the field. It's really built for just football.
Yeah, it's a football scoreboard.
I don't know if the Gridiron Club still exists, does it?
Yes.
It does. I am on the Gridiron Club.
Right.
I am.
Are they aware of this problem, and are they willing to contribute towards it?
I don't know that they're aware of this problem. We don't have a press box right now, so I think we're more concerned with the fact that we don't have a press box.
Okay. Is this a showstopper? Are you prevented from running games because of the scoreboard?
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
No, it's just more done manually with the timing and the penalties.
So Sue, I did notice on the quote that's on the OneDrive, the model is for a football scoreboard. That looks kind of like this one. Did you know that?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I looked up the model on the Daytronics website for the quote that's on the OneDrive, and it's for a football scoreboard in terms of how it's laid out.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. That's certainly not the intent. The intent is for it to cover all this, as many sports as can be, by getting it upgraded. I don't know, that quote,
I also want to point out that it's for scoreboards. The softball field, the girls softball is over at Freedom Field. So now it's the new home for girls softball. That scoreboard doesn't work. The baseball has no scoreboard. JV soccer team has no, you just don't know what the score is. You don't know what the time is. I mean, it's not a bad ask, because to Sue's point, hasn't been done since 1995, and it only serves football, and that's not fair to everybody else, because there's a lot more sports than just football.
All right, I agree, Paul. I'm just saying that the model that was on the quote is for a football scoreboard, so maybe something you want to look back at. But to Francine's point, I noticed that there's also a sound system involved in the quote of the scoreboard. And if the Gridiron Club's looking to replace the press box, which has always been the source of the sound, we may want to coordinate that we're not duplicating effort here.
Good point.
I am not suggesting that the Gridiron is replacing the press box. We are concerned that the press box is not there. It did impact the last few games. That was, I think, and folks on this meeting probably know much better than I do. I think that was at least partially funded through the Chatterton Fund, who was the prior AD at the school. I'm not privy to what's going on with the press box. My only point was, I think right now, the Gridiron, we're probably more concerned with that because of the what role that served, less so than the scoreboard, because the scoreboard at least works. And
Yeah.
being the Gridiron Club, it's works for football.
Well, we definitely need a new press box. I mean, obviously, we're working to replace that
Right.
from the insurance from the.
right, the insurance company is replacing the press box, so.
Oh, are they? Oh, okay.
Yes, oh, yes.
I didn't
So,
know that.
they're replacing the press box, and I believe the sound system was in that press box, so anything that was in that building is also being covered by insurance, and so, we're
Oh.
just waiting.
Oh, interesting.
I
Okay.
think part of the reason is they're waiting on the weather to break to actually start to rebuild.
Sure.
I mean, they've come out and got the information that they needed to get the measurements of what we need.
Yeah.
They won't give us anything bigger and better, but they will replace it with something
Comparable, right?
comparable,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
any of the items that were inside. So we've already
Yeah.
received, I think we just received about a $25,000 check last week as an advancement to start replacing the items that were inside. Because there was equipment inside, there was the sound system inside.
Right, right. Oh, that's good to know. That's news to me, and that's good to know. I'll share it with my
Yes.
counterparts on the Gridiron, because I'm not sure they were aware of it either. And as I said, those last couple games, it was a challenge trying to make the announcements.
Absolutely.
It was, we made it work, and it all worked out great. But it was a challenge. So okay. So
Well,
thank you for letting me know.
The team couldn't have done better. We'll say that much. They were
Oh my
pretty
God,
good.
I could spend the next hour telling you how excited I am and how much I miss it already. So
I bet.
Well, so just to close the loop on that, Sue, if there is money and insurance money for the sound system, maybe that will help, pay for the sound system that's affiliated with this scoreboard, because there is a device that has to go somewhere indoors to control the board and the sound.
Correct.
It would be helpful to understand exactly what the sound system here is. And I can't say I've spent time at games up there, but my understanding is this scoreboard is on the opposite side of the field and not in a place where people typically populate during a game, but maybe I just have that completely wrong. If the sound system is currently in the press box and that's going to be replaced, I guess my question is, does that insurance replacement obviate the need for the sound system built into this quote? It's a pretty substantial number. I think the number was, 30 or 35 grand in my head anyway.
Yes, that's right, Brian.
Okay.
Well, Sue, we can go back to Steve and ask for
We
specifics
can. I
about.
mean, I'm just trying to think. And I wanna say, and I'm not 100% sure, I think that quote that Steve had received, requested to get an idea of what it would cost was before we had our press box blow over and damage the sound system. So I think his intent was to try to update both, but now the insurance is gonna cover the sound system. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I believe, because that happened back in October, the press box, that we lost the press box. And it was right around that time we were starting to put together, or right after that, they were putting together our list of capital items.
Yeah, it's also the uncertainty of what they're going to provide for us in the press box. And, you know, there's a whole myriad of reasons that I can see our athletic director wanting to get a full, complete scoreboard here. But your point is well taken, you know, as we're kind of sifting through what we're going to get, which would appear, you know, as you said, there has to be some sort of sound mechanism inside somewhere, that it would be inside to me, that it would be inside the press box.
Okay. One other question about the scoreboard. There was a pretty substantial number for, I mean, it was quoted two ways, right? There are two different installation options in the quote. One is to put the scoreboard where the scoreboard currently exists, I assume using, you know, the existing posts. And that was a, you know, fairly small number. There was also a different installation alternative, which, you know, is a completely new installation. Presumably somewhere else or higher up, but at a substantially, you know, larger sum of money in terms of cost. Do you know what the current thought is? Which option you're actually contemplating?
I don't, honestly.
Okay.
That'd be something I'd have to ask Steve, the director of athletics, you know what? I think he'd be happy with a new one in either way.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a reason to move it and incur the cost, you know, let's have that conversation. But you know, but it'd just be helpful to know. I mean, because I don't have the numbers in front of me. It sounds like, Susan, you may, but the installation, a new installation location was substantially more money. I think the number was like 20 grand.
Yeah, it's $20,000 delta.
Okay.
So that actually inflates the quote a bit because both installations are on this quote.
Right. So look, to make a long story short, if we're getting the sound system from the insurance company and we don't need a new location for the scoreboard, you know, this becomes more like a $50,000 ask as opposed to a 95. And as you sense, every little bit counts.
Well, can I just clarify one thing, Brian? Because I thought
Sure.
that Paul or someone had said that this was for all the scoreboards. So this is the one that we're focusing on. I thought.
Yeah, I would defer to Pat and Sue on this, but having read the quote, that's not my interpretation. This is
Okay.
for a single scoreboard at Alumni
Okay.
Field. It is not for all the sports at all the
Okay.
fields.
Okay.
That was my interpretation, but I certainly want to defer to the management team up at the district.
Yeah, well, we wanted to make sure that all the scoreboards were addressed. The most expensive one would be the Alumni Field. However, like the Freedom Field already pretty much has the scoreboard already up there. It's not much that it needs other than like kind of like the guts of the sign, and it's roughly between 3,500 and 4,500. So that'd be one for that sign. And then as far as the soccer field, it would be something, it would have to probably be temporary. So I'm not expecting that to be a lot of money. So I think the biggest cost would probably be the high school.
Okay, sorry, I'm just completely confused now. Is there a formal request for multiple scoreboards or is there a formal request for one scoreboard?
It's the Alumni Field scoreboard. So your initial interpretation was correct, Brian.
Okay, thank you.
For this particular ask, Paul's just
Okay.
pointing out that there's a need in other areas.
Understood, but I just
No.
our committee understands what we're being asked to fund in this cycle.
Yeah, well, we are asking to fund the scoreboards in the Freedom Field. Again, this is you really can't fund the football for the boys without funding the softball for the girls. And the girls'
Okay,
JV.
Paul, can I
This
just,
field- this
Paul, can I
field is-
suggest
yeah.
that, Paul, can I suggest that you sort this out with your committee and the management?
Okay, but we did, and just so you know, it says scoreboards. I thought.
I see what this says, but the request in front of us doesn't say that.
Okay, well, I thought it did. When I saw the presentation, it said scoreboards. So if we have to redo it and put the scoreboards on there, that's fine. But, I mean, they don't work. Scoreboards don't work. I don't know what to tell you. We need scoreboards. It's embarrassing.
Paul, I don't disagree. We as our committee need to understand what you're requesting. And right now we have a request for a single scoreboard.
Okay, well,
If it's more than that, if you could sort it out with your team and come back to us, that would be
we
fine.
will. Okay,
Thank
thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks, Brian.
The Deer Hill classrooms, last year and the year before, we retiled a lot of the corridors in the main areas in the Deer Hill. We just want to continue by moving into some of the classrooms and at least start the process of replacing floor tiles. They're in a state of, some of the classrooms are in a state of disrepair, need replacement. You can see some of the pictures here. These are classrooms with cracks and just disfigurements. So this was an ask from the principal at Deer Hill to start the process of replacing some of the classrooms.
How's the experience been since we've attacked the fairly substantial water problem and floor damage? I know we had basically bulging in the hallways, and we had water leaks coming through the doors from the interior courtyard, which caused a lot of the tiling to effectively peel up in those areas. That work was all done, I think, over the course of the past few years. Are we comfortable that remediation work is successful and that we're not, suffering continued damage, or do we need to do more water work before we put more money into tile?
That solution worked excellent, Brian, and the problem has been eradicated.
Okay, so you're
Clearly.
comfortable at this point continuing forward on the investment in the replacement of the tile. Okay.
Hallways and those doors where we constructed a weather vestibule look great.
Yep,
Okay.
perfect.
I was just there today asking about it.
Perfect. It's always good to hear that the solutions that we invested in work. So
Genius solution. That canopy in particular, that area was just totally eradicated any issue.
okay, and just so I understand, what I gathered from Nick is not with us tonight, but what I gathered from Nick is that the tile that went into the corridors and the tile that will go into the classrooms to replace both these old tiles as well as the carpeted areas, and some of the entire classrooms are carpeted. The new tiles will be wax-free fundamentally. So, we will not need the custodian staff to strip and re-wax
Correct.
each summer, which I understand is, a week's, if not months long job.
Well, it
It's
also
very-
blocks the school up while that's being done as well. And so
Okay.
can't access the areas. That's been very successful and it looks
Okay.
great. So real
All right. So
big win.
should free up some custodian budget for you guys to do other things, paint, whatever. And certainly free up the team's time to to pay attention to the details up there. So that's all good.
I have a question. This is for the superintendent and the finance director. Why have you placed maintenance and upkeep items at positions 10, 11, 12 on your list and 13? Putting them behind non-maintenance, non-upkeep items like the field lights and the scoreboards, just to name two things. What's the rationale there of putting the field lights and scoreboards ahead of maintenance and upkeep?
Well, we actually, we ordered these in our Finance and Facilities Committee, so it involved Sue and me working on it as well as, and I working on it as well as our Finance Committee. I think where we have our turf and field being replaced, I think the need was in the score and the press box. I think we determined that that was of importance to get that whole package done. I don't really have a stronger rationale than that. I know that the ones in the top of the list in tier one, we kind of identified were safety issues. And then of course, our bus lease, and I'd even include the replacement of the Chromebook on that lease as something that absolutely needed to happen. But you know, when we're looking at the sports scoreboard lights, as opposed to be, you know, where do you value that above the maintenance issues? I think it was just a decision based on the fact that we have a lot of things happening in our a lot of needs in our fields that are going to be attended to, and to get the whole package done. That's I really don't have. I mean, certainly Paul and Sue, who are on that committee, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my recollection.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to make a point that over the last couple of years, and I actually was on advisory 2 years ago and prior to that, and now here on capital budget, we felt that maintenance had been short shrifted over time, and that emphasis needed to be put on maintenance and upkeep of our existing facilities as a priority. So I just want to lay that out there, that seems to be the right way to go about things, but that's just my opinion at this point. But I just want to make you aware that's my rationale in asking that question.
That makes sense. That's an appreciated perspective. Also, there's the matter of just having had tiled corridors done recently, and you know, really, we do feel we've had some upkeep done from a maintenance perspective in Deer Hill. So this is sort of, you know, that may have pushed the scoreboard and field lights down in previous capital cycles. So I think that it's just you know, your perspective is absolutely accurate. It's just a matter of, we didn't attend to the field lights and the scoreboard last time because we did some other things, and now we just moved them up a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So the Deer Hill is looking to replace staff and student furniture. Here's some pictures of some of the furniture. Some of the desks are very old. They're duct taped in places. Some of the drawers don't open any longer. A lot of the student desks are the old style where they lift, and the mechanism's not working anymore. So when the child lifts the desk, it slams shut on their fingers. We also have the pilot program going on, where we're looking at, you know, different types of furniture. So the question came up earlier today, and I got more clarification. This is more not to do all student desks or all staff desks. It's probably one grade level as well as teachers, with whatever, you know, the pilot program comes up with for different types of designs of furniture. So
all age specific, size to the age of the student, you know, grade 3 to 5. And that's the big thing. It's just not putting any furniture in there. It's putting furniture that's appropriate for that age group, and that can be used in collaborative ways as we move forward. They just don't have furniture that's appropriate for their size kids enough. And that's kind of what it is.
Question on is the pricing on this request coming from the state purchasing list?
One of the we got several quotes on it, and you know, several pieces of information, but one of them, at least one of them, is on the state bid list, if not two. So it's just a matter of, you know, deciding. We're still piloting it right now, and bringing in some design ideas and furniture. So this would be a continuation of.
And it's also consistency across our classrooms too, to make sure that they, that we do have consistent furniture. There's a lot of furniture that, is just not whole right now. Maybe we're using chairs that were recycled into stools, and there's just some things that aren't appropriate for the size of the student, and that's the main thing.
So this is Francine. So I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying now, which is maybe what I must have misunderstood earlier today. So this price tag is really for just one grade within the school, and whatever furniture you choose, if that's what you decide to go with, then what I think I'm hearing is you're going to need another $120,000 at some point in the future to then outfit the other 2 grades in that school. Is that fair?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, depending on what the final decision is, we know we can't do the whole school with this amount of money. So we would look at least doing 1 grade level. If we can do 1.5 grade levels or 2 grade levels, that would be great. It's really going to depend on what the decision is made on, what types of furniture and what the cost is. But we would look at it, grade level. So if we can only, we don't want to spread it thin. We want at least the 1 grade level to be all the same. And if we can, spread it over into the next grade level or half the next grade level, then that's what we would look to do.
Thank you for the clarifying.
So let me just make sure I understand this, because I also, I guess, left the conversation earlier today with a slightly different perspective.
Right. You would, I mean, there was questions in our meeting today, and I went back
Okay.
to the principal, and I went back to Dr. Sullivan and our Director of Technology and Digital Learning, and that's more what they're looking for. My original was they wanted to replace all student desks, which was not correct.
Okay. So it's 1, possibly 2 or 1.5 grade levels. Is this student and teacher desks in that grade?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And is it a reasonable assumption that the teacher desks are substantially more expensive than the student desks?
It's really going to depend on what they choose. They may not be desks. They may be tables.
Okay.
I really don't know what the final decision is going to be and what it's going to look like. I don't believe it's going to be the typical conventional style, big, clunky teacher desks.
Okay.
Ceiling tiles at Osgood. So this is replacement of all the ceiling tiles throughout the school for safety reasons and cosmetic reasons. Here are some of the tiles. They're granted, some of it's from water damage, so the immediate need is to change the ones that are that damaged and wet, which is what we're working on now with facilities. And then overall, the principal would like to see all the ceiling tiles replaced, so they're consistent, because they're all different styles, all different shades. It's kind of a mismatch of material, and it would be for safety and cosmetic reasons.
Have the underlying water infiltration problems been solved?
It's an excellent question, Mike. I was in there this afternoon and was asking the same question, and I don't believe so. So it's something that obviously needs to be addressed before, putting, you want to, basically fix the underlying issue before you put a veneer over it, right?
Right.
So that's something that, we're going to have to look into, and we're certainly not going to replace these, and if the underlying leak isn't fixed, because if it's not, then we're just going to be having to replace brand new ceiling tiles in the near future.
All right, thank you.
Correct. And we do on this, in this year's capital, we did request to have the HVAC in replaced on the roof, I believe at Osgood and at the over the gymnasium at the middle high school. We did go out to bid and we have to go back out to bid. We rejected all bids. The pricing was way off. So facilities is going through the bid specs to be clearer on what our exact needs are. So that is on the list for this year or hopefully this year. And the tiles would be for next year. So we, like Mr. McClellan said, we certainly wouldn't replace all these ceiling tiles if we haven't replaced the HVAC problem,
Okay.
the roof unit.
You know, on the HVAC, and this is just an aside, and it's last year's business, although it's this year's execution or maybe next year's execution. You know, you may just have a timing issue there with supply chain. My understanding is that, you know, everything in that universe right now is being sort of usuriously priced.
Yes.
You know, things that used to sit in a warehouse across town now take 6 or 9 months to get. And if someone actually has one in stock, you know, they're not going to sell it for a normal price. So unfortunately, there may just be some time that needs to pass before that can get resolved. Coming back to the tiles, however, I'm just looking at these pictures, and you know, it looks like there's a tremendous amount of, you know, various installations, you know, cut into these tiles, right? Whether they be speakers or hanging lights or flush lights. I'm not sure what else I see there. Exit signs. I mean, there seems to be a lot of custom cutting and installation with regards to these ceiling tiles. And I would just ask you perhaps to go back to facilities and ask them whether it's really realistic to replace all these tiles with all this custom work for $20,000. I mean, you might be able to buy the tiles, but this isn't, it's what I'm looking at right here is not as simple as just popping, you know, square tiles into these frames. I mean, many of them are, but many of them are not.
Yeah, I can, go ahead.
I was just gonna, you're right. This particular area, though, has more recessed lighting than other areas in the building. It's right. This is right as you go up the main staircase, and it's just it's a prominent area from here down through the front entrance.
It may not be representative. I just, you know, just ask to make sure that they're not missing that.
Yep. Nope. Good
the
point.
amount of labor
Taken.
involved in this job.
Yeah, I mean, I can see 6 or 7 different types of things in that one picture. So
Right away. Yep.
yep.
I also think the intent is facilities would be doing it.
Mhm.
Because we had a
Maybe the
conversation
answer.
of,
Yeah.
anything else on this?
It appears no.
Okay, so this was on our list last year. It was a bigger ask. It was replacement of the closed space and the tiles in the middle school, high school gym entryways. As you can see, the cove base is damaged. It's unsightly. We've done a lot of painting and upgrading. It's just unsightly to look at. It's you know, it's old.
Yeah, it's also in our most prominent entrance area at the high school. You know, it's the area that most people see, quite frankly, from other communities and even our own community, because it's the entrance to where our sports complex is. So it just doesn't send the right message about pride in schools. And it is absolutely aesthetic, but it is clearly not a pleasing aesthetic situation.
I think also town meeting as well is in there, so.
Correct. And we've done some great work on the other parts of the building to make it look much better.
It really does look fresh. Your team has done a nice job, not just in that location, but in many others.
Yeah, thank you for recognizing that. It's sort of night and day in most spots. This particular spot, though, it's funny, you know how it goes. You paint one thing in your house and then you notice another thing. And that's kind of what we have here. It's like we took care of some real deep needs, and now this is kind of glaring at us where it wasn't so much before. And its facilities doing good work too.
Brian, your dog's hungry.
I'll go on mute. It's a big dog.
This is an ask from the athletic director. So it's a 15-passenger van for athletics. Again, we're having a really hard time getting our athletes to and from their competitions. We're outsourcing to some of the, local towns. Hingham's been doing a lot of transportation for us. We've asked parents to drive their children back and forth to their sport events because we can't always provide transportation. One, because our buses aren't finishing their day now till 4:30, and most of the athletes are going out the door at 2:45, 3 o'clock to head towards competitions. So it conflicts with our buses. With a van like this, there's no special license. It carries 15 passengers. We asked athletic director today, how many teams have 15 or less? And he said there were 17 teams that have 15 or less members. So it would definitely help alleviate the transportation problems because we're having a hard time getting, like I said, our athletes to and from their activities.
Is it possible to get a lease on this rather than an outlay and add more hardware, more vehicles to our fleet?
We could certainly reach out and look for a lease, yes.
Or also alternatively, well, these days, I guess used vehicles aren't any kind of bargain, so I'll take that back. But
Yeah.
Just as a way to save some costs would be to look at a lease.
Yeah, that was brought up. That's a good suggestion.
Either that or, the other option could be athletic revolving could fund part of it if need be.
Who would drive this vehicle?
So the coaches could drive it. Athletic director could drive it.
They don't need a special license, Sue. I think.
There's no special license. We looked that up today in our little pre-meeting. There's no special license. Anything 15 and under, it's not marked school bus, can be driven by the coaches. So, a golf coach could pack up his team and go, swim coach. I don't know, the other 17 teams that have less than 16, but it would certainly help alleviate that issue and probably save us some money paying other districts or outsourcing to, contracting out.
Are there insurance considerations associated with a van like this that you have to be aware of in case of a problem with a driver or with an accident? Aren't there insurance questions to be raised about whether or not we have unlicensed people doing this?
Well, there's no special license, just a regular mass driver's license is what they need to drive this.
We just have to vet that, make sure that they're.
We'd have to reach out to our insurance company to make sure, we have the coverage added to it that we need.
Yeah. But it's not a complicated scenario. Because there's no special license.
Correct. The next two items were on last year and I believe the year before that we've talked about resurfacing the asphalt road from Pond Street. We talked about it today. There's a drain there in the middle of the road. You can see the road is cracked and it's just probably time, just basic wear and tear, winter damage. It's not appealing at all.
Yeah, it's the same as, it's, the same issue we had before, just a year later.
And then the other piece,
We discussed this with Brian Joyce, and here's another item that I think requires both Brian and the school committee and school department to huddle and come up with the best solution.
Okay. Just writing that down. And then the last one is same area. Just further down.
Actually, Sue, if I could, just for a moment before we leave this, I did note on the request that the request is different this year in the sense that the sidewalk specifies granite curbing and asphalt paving on the, as a sidewalk surface,
Yes.
which is very different than the request we had last year.
Oh, that's true.
We had two concerns that I can remember offhand last year. One is that we really didn't want to do this until the field work was done because we didn't, want construction vehicles or anything else to be banging up a new sidewalk. So we'd like to finish the fields and the track first, and then do the road and the sidewalk. The second was, just looking at this, this curb. It's clear that the plows destroyed it, and we were very hesitant to simply forge ahead and replace a concrete sidewalk, recognizing that it was going to look just like this after a few winters and plow passes. So this new request is obviously a different sidewalk. How did you arrive at the new conclusion with granite and asphalt? Is that something you did with Brian? Is that something a decision you reached independently?
No, I think if I recall, I think these questions came up last year. We took them
Okay.
into consideration. Nick tabled them in his mind when we were putting together our information. So we did upgrade the request to this. So
Okay.
it was more, appetizing that the concrete, it's cracking and crumbling, and the asphalt and granite would be much more durable and probably last longer.
As I recall,
Okay.
it was more of a recommendation from, I believe this group had some thoughts on it, like you said, but I think it
Yeah.
was facilities that really, and Nick and crew that really made that clear to us.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So it sounds like we just need to, to run this past Brian and make sure that he agrees. I would be shocked if that's not the case, but to Michael's point, we should, it is ultimately DPW that does the road work and the sidewalks in town. So,
Yeah, we also did granite on the other side, I believe, too. When we replaced that sidewalk.
The front and the front of the middle of the high
makes
school.
sense.
Yeah,
One thing I want to ask, and I know it's come up before in other meetings, just generally, have you also considered, or does this take into account extending the sidewalk to Pond Street?
so I know there's some conservation,
Like wetlands or something there? on
yeah,
that side?
obstacles
Yeah.
there. So I, from my understanding, it's not something we are able to do necessarily. We've had discussions about this too. I don't know, Sue, do you have recollection on that? That was my,
No, I believe that's why it stops right by the end of the field, because then it gets wet over in that area, which is why it's just left natural.
it's kind of frustrating from a safety perspective, obviously. Would like that to, you have snowy days and we have to work hard to plow this area, but you can't even get all the way down to the road because there's no sidewalk to plow.
Yeah, it's awkward for the walkers because
Yes.
the sidewalk doesn't exist until you get partway up the hill.
Yeah, you could actually, if you go to the slide previous, so you can see it pretty clearly.
Right.
So this would clearly require, a Concom request and possibly approval. It's probably worth the effort to figure it out. It's possible that they did this because, they just ended here because they hadn't gone through Concom and couldn't go any further at that time and intended, to ultimately go through the environmental review and get the permit. I mean, it's done here in town by our own Concom. It's not, it's not some incredibly difficult process, but it does require an application and a discussion with them. Could require some mitigation somewhere else along this wetland or some other wetland, but it generally can and has been done in other places.
That would be great.
And I can't speak for Concom, but there are plenty of sidewalks in close proximity to wetlands. So.
Yeah.
This is our 10-year plan. Obviously, I couldn't blow it up big enough for everyone to see.
Certainly
But
not big enough for me to see.
No. Yeah, I can't blow it up here. The actual slide itself, you can blow it up and
Yeah.
see. Well, we've submitted the 10-year plan to the town. So it is, it is on file there. And that pretty much concludes the presentation. Let's see. Just go back to, just put this up
I'm
there for
sorry,
everyone.
here I am. I took a look at the 10-year plan. It's on our OneDrive, and what jumps out is, I think, $90 million for a new school. And yes, that's appropriate for a 10-year plan, but it kind of skews all the numbers. So just as a comment, I think it'd be helpful to put that $90 million school building to one side as an asterisk, so that we can actually see what your year-to-year operational budgeting looks like, if that makes sense.
Certainly. I just didn't want it, I didn't want it to get lost
It's gotta be on
anywhere.
there
I
somewhere,
wanted it on everybody's radar that, this is what we're thinking of, the direction we're thinking of going. So I just made a placeholder there so people were aware it's there. But I could certainly put it down at the bottom with an asterisk, just so we all know it's there.
Yeah, and this is just my own view, that it would just be helpful to, as I look year to year, I'm interested to see how the school spending fluctuates and what emphases are you're putting into certain years, as I notice a number going up or a number going down. It just helps the view. And, yes, I can probably back out 90 million from whatever that total was on my own, but just a comment, nothing that
No,
you have.
Certainly.
Well
Like I
taken.
said, I just wanted to make sure it was on the radar.
Yep. Thank you.
So this just goes back to, our prioritized list and what the total is. So I don't know if there's any more questions or discussions to have. I mean, I've got, a couple things. I've got to reach out to Ron. I've got to go back to Steve and find out about the scoreboard quotes. I'm going to talk to Nick about tiles.
We'll get a little more specificity regarding the furniture too.
That was
Correct.
great. And your list was my list, with the exception of just needing to check in with Brian Joyce to make sure that the quote on the cost estimate on the sidewalk and drive are appropriate.
Yeah.
And also to press a little bit on the process to understand, what it would take to actually continue all the way down to Pond Street.
Continue with sidewalk. Okay.
Yeah.
I would also ask you to go back to your list. And again, it's my opinion. The rest of the committee may differ, but I would be more inclined to accept some of your proposals if I saw more of the maintenance and upkeep higher up your list. And you may want to go back and reorder your priorities. But that's one person on this board, not everybody. And then also, wherever you can rethink your approach to each of your line items to see where you might be able to subtract out some of the cost.
Yeah, we certainly, the possibility of a lease on the van is something we want to look at, but your other points are well taken too.
Thank you.
Let me just ask a strange question about the van. One of the things we're trying to do in town is to move to all electric. And a sports van is a prime opportunity, right? I mean, it runs for a few hours a day and it's sitting the rest of the day. So it can very easily charge and have plenty of range to get, wherever these kids are going. Would it impact your thinking, if electric vans were coming down the pike in a year or two? Or is this more urgent than that?
Well, I know it's fairly urgent just because of our shortage of drivers right now, but I
Okay.
do think that an electric van makes serious sense.
I'm not sure they even exist, so maybe this is a rhetorical
Well,
question.
I would imagine they do. I mean, I actually don't know, but I would imagine they do.
If
It
they
would be-
don't now, they will in a year. They probably will in 2 years for sure.
Yeah.
I know they exist for cargo vans, but I'm not sure about passenger.
Yeah, and then maybe it's a good idea if we do look at lease for maybe a 3-year lease, because then if we do go electric, then we don't own it. So I think it's a
Right.
good idea to look into leasing.
Yeah, I think that was a really astute
idea.
thought. Okay.
Okay, so does that do it?
That completes the presentation unless
Yeah.
so does, you have more questions or comments, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, we got a list of things to do. And we appreciate, we will go do that. Get back to you with information. Correct, Sue?
Correct.
Yeah, as far as some next steps, maybe we could set something out here before you leave, and that is, do we want to have another meeting with both Brian, Joyce, and those folks who are on this call, and look at some of those highlighted items that we know involve facilities, giving you a chance to have your own discussions with the folks in facilities first, and then perhaps come back with some proposals, and then all of us can review. That's a suggestion. We don't have to, but that might help.
Yeah, we could also give you information and then based on that information, determine the need to come back. It may clarify some of your questions, but I'm not adverse to that for sure.
I would encourage you to, to the extent you get answers or get resolutions on any of these, feel free to forward those in the interest of time so that, so the capital can, register them and
That's right.
know what's happening as opposed to waiting for the next sort of big bang meeting date, right?
Yeah,
that's-
absolutely.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Right, and we have the paging system as one of those items.
Actually, yes, we do.
So that's more of a Ron Menard question. And with Ron, the questions were the Chromebooks and the paging zones. So certainly, if the information we provide you is still in question, we can try to get Ron to be at any meeting we have next.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay.
Not
Thank
for
you for
me.
your time and for your help. Always
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank
to your
you
entire
all.
team for your preparation and your patience with us. We appreciate all of the information.
Good, great questions. Very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Capital
good
Budget,
night.
if you could stand by, we'll just wrap up once the school committee is free to drop or stay, either or.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
Thank you, Paul. All right. So I think we've just got Capital Budget Committee at this point. I don't think we have I don't think we have any minutes to review. I guess the real question is next steps, just in terms of the cycle. We've been through all the departments at this point, with the exception of Harbor, I believe. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so we have Harbor, and we've heard all the other requests at this point. I did forward earlier in the committee meeting just a spreadsheet that has, you know, all of the capital requests on it, so that you can see all the departments in one place. And I think in addition to, you know, getting Lori in to present to us, I think really one of the key next steps is to probably have a finance discussion with Don Pyatt, go through past articles, see what projects are completed, what funds are being freed up, possibly released back to capital. Also spend some time understanding exactly, you know, what we're going to have available to spend. I think we have a general idea, and I can preview that for folks now. As it stood at the beginning of the, as it stands, we should have a starting balance in the stabilization fund of approximately 1.5 million. We right now are slated for an appropriation of approximately 2 million. We will have debt service of approximately 600,000. Okay, so 1.5 plus 2 gets you to 3.5 minus 600,000, you know, gets you back down to 2.9. We generally have worked very hard to keep, you know, a minimum stabilization balance of approximately $1 million. Some years we've dipped slightly below it. We've never gone far. And so what that suggests is that we have about 1.9 million to spend. To Michael's point, earlier with the schools, you know, when you see this spreadsheet with all the departmental requests, the total of the request is about $4 million. So we do have a lot of work to prioritize, to get the departments to prioritize and ultimately make, you know, some decisions as to what has to happen this year versus what can wait. Just as a historical comment, you know, I'll tell you that, you know, every year that I've been on the committee, we've always had this issue of, you know, a few $1 million worth of requests more than we actually have available to spend. And oddly enough, it's almost always self-corrected in the past. You know, people can't get their projects sort of ready for prime time for appropriation. So it comes off, you know, slips into a subsequent year, or people come up with a different way of addressing the problem. So the request just comes off the list. And we've always, you know, we've always ended up with requests that were actually fairly close to the amount of money that we had available. We have bonded some things in years where that wasn't the case. And we're paying the price for that now with the $600,000 debt service that we're going to see this year. It feels to me, so that's just a long-winded background to what I'm about to say, which is it feels to me that the request list this year is comprised of requests that are less likely to slip out into subsequent years. I don't think this is going to my instinct is that this is not going to self-correct the way it has in the past. And that we really are going to have to figure out sort of landing slots for a lot of these projects and requests. And you know, many of them will not get done in this year. But it's just an instinct. It's still early in the cycle. But I guess I'm glad that we're through the requests as early as we are, because it just feels like we're gonna have a little bit more work to do this year to actually get to a to get to a conclusion. I'll stop there. Just, you know, curious if anyone has thoughts on what I've just said, or views, or anything else they want to add.
We're just going to end up having to prioritize. That's what it comes down to. So the question is, how do you do it?
Right.
So that's all there is to it. It may well be that you may have to chip away and look at things and say, can this be delayed or not? I mean, that's where you're going to have to do it. If in fact this doesn't fit, I can tell that. And I don't see things dropping off adequately, to be perfectly honest with you, to
Right.
actually fit, 1.9 million. I just don't see that. So they're very tough decisions. I mean, whether you're talking about IT, or you're talking about schools, or you're talking about, I don't know, DPW, for example. You have a couple of options within the DPW, which you might be able to do, but I'm not so sure what the other ones are. Anyways, I look at it. There are a few, but you may have a hard time, I think, in this case. I also want to point out that we still have not heard from the sewer department. We are supposed to make sure that they, in fact, have an adequate capital stabilization fund for the work that
Yes.
we do. And I do not think that we have an adequate answer from the water department. I'm having a meeting with them on the 16th,
Yeah,
and because we have no budget from them. Therefore, their numbers don't mean anything at this stage. There were projections, if you remember, but they're not concrete. They're not what they actually got for revenue, for example, as projected from last year to this year. So there are a few things that left to do here. So
yeah, absolutely. No, there's a ton more work to do, and you're probably in this conversation. This conversation is reinforcing why I was so eager to get through all the departments and get the schools in, as opposed to letting them slip into March, right? So we're totally on the same page. I mean, it's not that sewer and water are any less important. It's only that they don't factor into the math of fitting within the capital appropriation, Ralph. And that's the only reason why I'm have not been chomping at the bit with regards to sewer, and I'm comfortable sort of coming back to water at this point. But your points are absolutely accurate. I mean, we do need to get to the to the bottom of the retained earnings sufficiency in both cases. You're spot on. I did have a long conversation with Jason. He sent a detailed financial model and asked just me individually whether it made sense and was clear. And I'm going to meet with him and one-on-one just to first figure out, really for me to understand it, and then figure out how he can present it to the committee in a way that it makes sense, assuming that
For what spending? What model?
this is the water
Okay.
department.
let me interject that he has no fiduciary responsibility here. It has to be
Yes.
Steinmetz. It should be Steinmetz, who is the chair, and it should be with Don Pyatt, so we're sure the numbers are right.
Agreed.
So
We had that conversation too. So here's the practical reality of the situation. And it in retrospect, it was, I think, possibly we were, might have been a little unfair to Jason. Also, it might have been a little naive to have that meeting, at all with just Jason on my part. Certainly there was an expectation that we were, that the retained earnings sufficiency was going to be part of the discussion. But I think at least I underestimated how complicated that discussion was going to be. And, and the fact that there was no way that really Jason was the right person to do that solo. So I'm just, I'm looking back, just individually at my own decision to have that meeting with Jason as the representative from water, and it wasn't the right answer, nor was he the right person to have on the hot seat. Now, the interesting thing is the model, the water model, was put together by an outside consultant, the same consultant that did the rate study, as I understand it. The consultant it no longer works for us because they were largely unresponsive to the department's requests. So the model has been taken over, fundamentally by Jason and Don. It is no longer a third-party model. It is also not a model that's built by the water commissioners, which is complicated, right? Because really, it's to your point of fiduciary responsibility. I'm pretty sure they're the ones responsible for running it, for setting the forecast and managing to the forecast. So it's messier than, more complicated, let's put it this way, than perhaps years past. But Ralph, you're right. I mean, ultimately, Don needs to be involved, and the board, the commissioners need to be involved in owning the model. I feel like right now it's been thrust on Jason, and he's an engineer. He's not, not the right person to be building or certainly owning and being accountable for the performance of a department to its financial model. So,
Can I just point out that Michelle has had her hand raised for some time?
oh, I totally apologize. I can't see that. Oh, yes, there you are. Michelle, please feel free to interject at any time.
No worries. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things that haven't been heard yet, that have come on the radar just recently, which one would be Tanya Bodell would like to present to the committee on February 28th, about her microgrid concept and the BRIC grant, because she would like to go to annual town meeting with an ask. And prior to doing so, she has to come before this board. So that's one ask. Another item that has come up is our lease is ending on the Leaf vehicles, the town inspection vehicles that we have, the electric vehicles. It's up December 2022. We do have the opportunity to buy them out. We're thinking we may come before capital during this cycle, not the fall, to figure out if timing is right now to buy them out, or if we let the leases go and then figure something out at a later date. So that's something else that'll come before you.
So these are the electric vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many do we have?
We have 3 electric vehicles. We're not suggesting that we buy all 3, but 2 are used regularly. So we'd like to retain 2 if we can. And they were leased on a grant. And we have the opportunity to purchase them. So we're just
Okay.
we're weighing our options.
So there's actually a purchase option built into the lease contract, Michelle?
There is. Yep.
Okay. Well,
So it's something to look at as we talk to Elder Affairs, because they do use one quite often, and Town Inspectional Services uses one. The third one is used intermittently, so we don't necessarily need a third one, but the 2 are pretty important to the
We
town.
squeezed 15 football players, or I'm sorry, golfers into a.
it would be like the clown car, Mike.
Sure, we could keep
They
all
just
3
keep
cars
pouring
and put
out.
5 in each vehicle.
Right. And the solution to our budgeting problem is Michelle. Michelle, we want you to get a dartboard and put it up in your office.
Yes.
And then we're going to have rounds. We're going to play rounds of darts. See who gets
Oh,
what.
it's so difficult. There's
We'll
a
have all
lot
the
of,
departments on, and they can pick the dart, you throw it. And
Yep.
oh,
they win.
there's a lot of asks before you. I don't know how you're going to make these difficult decisions because there's quite a few.
We're going to make them in collaboration with all the departments. It's not really, the right place for us to just sort of in an ivory tower make the decision. So we will not.
I have some thoughts on how we might proceed in a way that might not have been tried before, and it may
Please.
well be ridiculous. Before I launch into that, do we want to set up perhaps a separate meeting, or do we want to, I mean, we've got about 10 minutes left. I can, certainly hold off, or we could talk.
No, I mean, if you've got thoughts, I'm always happy to hear them. The only other item of business besides that is, we should decide when we want to meet next. And part of that's dependent on, Don's availability with regards to finance numbers, Jason perhaps with regards to water. But I'm sure people don't want to meet Monday, it's Valentine's Day. I guess the question is for today is if there were any other department that were ready to meet next week, would people be interested in meeting next week, or would you rather just do it the following week?
Okay. Next
I think
week's
it's
okay for
okay.
me. Sure.
Sorry?
Yes, okay. Yes, for me. Right, next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, you're okay if there's something. If
We're
there's
celebrating
something to do?
Valentine's Day on Saturday.
Okay. Francine, Susan, you're okay with it too?
You guys celebrate Valentine's Day?
No,
Yes.
if we were to do a meeting some other day next week, depending on.
I'm just saying, if it's not on a weekend, it's just another night.
Okay, perfect. Francine, you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say Mondays are easier for me. The rest of the week is a little more challenging.
Right.
Okay. Okay, well, right at this point, it's a hypothetical. Let me see if there's any business to do next week, and we'll go from there. It's certainly not going to be Monday because we would have had to post today. So with that,
Well,
why don't I turn it over to you,
Michelle's
Mike?
Michelle's got her
Sorry.
hand up again.
Sorry, just one more thing to let you know about. The harbor has taken off the $600,000 ask for this year.
Okay.
So there's no need to meet with the harbor for this year.
Okay, but there were two other requests from the harbor. One was a workboat, and one was I think plans and specs for a building. Is that
She has removed everything due to the climate right now, and she said she'll try again next year. Because there's no sense of having plans and specs made for a building that she can't necessarily even build based on the current climate. So she's mindful of supply chain and how things are being affected, and she doesn't want stamp plans just sitting around on a shelf getting dusty, so she's going to push it off.
now that makes sense? She'll get a lot more building for the money, for the same amount of money 2 years from now, for sure. Okay, so that just freed up $640,000. We're down to 333 in requests.
Okay.
And with that, Michael, you've got the floor.
Okay. In my work, where we've had to choose and prioritize with many stakeholders with limited funds, we've used some techniques that we've learned from some project management concepts. And it's essentially ranked choice voting. So what I'm thinking of, and it's not a proposal yet, but this is what I'm thinking of, is we basically take maybe 2 or 3 departments at a time and do some ranked choice voting on them. You take another group of 2 or 3 and do the same, and the final group of 2 or 3 and do the same. See where you're at, and at least try and clarify our thinking and our support for some of the items. One technique that we use is assigning points in an unusual way. So if I'm giving something my number 1, that's worth 1 point. If I give somebody something my number 2, that's worth 4. And if I give something my number 3, that's worth 9. Low point wins. So by using the square of 1, 2, and 3, you really pull apart the choices. And that helps a lot, because otherwise you often get into ties, and that gets
Right.
So
Right.
by using the square, it helps, I'm repeating myself, it pulls things apart, it makes it clearer to see. So those are some techniques that I've used successfully in the past, and it may help us here. Oh, one other thought, and that would be, I would very much want to have Chris Senior weigh in, particularly on the department administration side, for what he feels. I would like to get his opinions on some of these requests and bring him into our decision-making process, so that he's got some skin in the game for his groups, for his departments. That's another suggestion. Try and help us get through this.
I think those are all good suggestions. I think they're all good. Those are all good suggestions, Michael. We may also need to dust off the ranking methodology that we built.
That will help. That will absolutely help.
Yeah, but actually have never had to implement. I mean,
Right.
we've been lucky that we've never had to implement it. This stuff is always, we've always gotten close enough where we could make it work without actually having to force rank things and make cuts. But we may have to dust that off this year. Just
Right.
clear, just to help clarify the methodology.
Right. Yeah, Mike Barclay's on the call, on the Zoom meeting here. Mike, how are things going with advisory, and what are your thoughts on picking and choosing?
I mean, things are going pretty well with advisory. I think we're still trying to nail down our schedule for the next, call it 6 to 8 weeks, to make sure that we're having the opportunity to meet with all of the different departments and not have anything come at us last minute before town meeting. You know, I listened to everything tonight, and, you know, a lot of hard choices. And I mean, something I've heard over the last several weeks, listening to a lot of companies report their earnings, public companies report their earnings, is the fact that, you know, CapEx requirements that, you know, you've mentioned it, there are supply chain issues all over. And sometimes things, just the availability of them aren't there. And so it is a tough decision between saying, you know, is this a need where we have to go find it and overpay for it because there's a supply chain issue or a logistical issue, versus being able to put it off for a year or so. And yeah, I mean, your forced rank system, I've actually heard a couple of companies talk about that, big multinational companies with lots of different divisions, where they come together and they do that amongst the different divisions to then prioritize for the corporation as a whole. So you know, it's a difficult backdrop. I mean, you know, given the asks exceed your $1.9 million budget, and there's a lot of things out there that are more expensive. I mean, those ceiling tiles that, you know, for the schools, they may be hard to get. It may be hard to find the people to install them and do the custom work. And it's just hopefully one of those times where, you know, 12 months from now, a lot of this stuff has freed up, and the availability of goods is better than it is today.
Right. Thank you.
I think that the other thing that's going to come out of this is ultimately a discussion as to what the appropriate level is to be funding capital going forward. I think this has all been in the back of our minds for years, but it's always largely worked, and we've never really had to turn away valid departmental requests. I think it feels to me like this year's going to be different. And I think that's a good catalyst to have the discussion as to, you know, okay, you know, what does the town really want to dedicate in terms of its investment in capital? What is the right level? You know, the appropriation was largely set on autopilot over a decade ago, through a deal whereby, you know, the folks that were running government at that time said, you know, we're going to fix the appropriation to capital and capital debt. Okay. And at that time, it was almost all debt and almost no capital. And as the debt rolled off, the capital appropriation that, you know, that came into the stabilization fund would increase as that roll off took place. Well, that roll off has largely run its course at this point. And that's why you see this $2 million number, which was largely locked in, you know, 10 years ago. So the whole thing's kind of been running on autopilot. It's not necessarily to say that, you know, the destination that was punched into the computer 10 years ago is the destination where people actually want to be today. So I think that's going to become the question. But with that rhetorical thought, the time is 9 o'clock. So
Hey, Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask you just one question on the debt
Sure.
service? That's that 600,000. That's
Yes.
principal and interest, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, and the way the capital debt works, Mike, is that, you know, if we choose to bond something or agree reluctantly to bond something that's a capital item, the debt service for that capital item comes out of, you know, our appropriation. So it's not an incremental source of funds. It can be it can be a smoothing mechanism, but ultimately, over any period of time, it reduces the amount of money that you have to spend on capital items. It does not increase it, the use of debt.
Agreed. Yeah, no, it's a smoothing mechanism at best.
At best.
You need, in
At best.
desperate times, you might need to pull that lever. But yeah, no, I get that totally.
A question, Brian, I know we all want to wrap it up, but by your last comment, are you implying that we could or should go back to Chris Senior and his budget construct and ask him to give or allocate more than $2 million to the capital budget funding mechanism?
I think it's a discussion, certainly a discussion with Chris as to,
And the select board.
and it was certainly a select board and advisory, like critically advisory, perhaps, more than the select board, right? Really, when it comes down to it. The select board is tasked with so many other things that advisory is not. I mean, this is advisory's
Right in their wheelhouse.
role, right?
Yeah.
This is where you guys focus and go deep. And the question really simply is, what is the appropriate number to be spending on capital each year based on our asset needs, right? It may well be that Chris's and his departments feel like this request list is a wish list, and they fully understand they're going to get cut back to $2 million, and they're fine, and that's the number, right? And that's fine if that's the way they're looking at it. But if people really want and need all these requests, then everyone needs to get their head around a larger capital appropriation.
Right.
And I don't really look at it on a one-time basis. I mean, I think the reality is we're trying to figure out what is the right recurring spend. So Michael, you homed in on a lot of these, these maintenance items, and I agree with you. It was a little bit perplexing that they would be below the scoreboard, for example, but neither here nor there. The point is we're actually seeing those requests now. Ralph and Susan can certainly chime in on this. 3-4 years ago, we didn't even see maintenance requests like this. I mean, the only time we saw a maintenance request was when something was absolutely broken. Right. But any type of taking care of the buildings, taking pride in the buildings, it was non-existent in terms of capital requests. Part of it was we didn't have the money, so they weren't even asking. So there is a directional improvement across the board and an understanding that these buildings, whether you're seeing a cash cost on these buildings in a given year or not, these buildings are accruing cash costs that are coming at us, and that we and it never ends, right? And we're going to get better and better visibility into what that run rate is over time. I feel like we're just seeing the beginning of it, and schools are probably further ahead than some of the other buildings, but.
Right. Okay.
Brian, it's been a while, but probably almost 10 years ago, I did a study for Hingham looking at capital policies of other towns. And rather than a fixed dollar, you find a lot of places, it's a percentage of the asset base, or the percentage, because as things go up in costs,
right,
having a static capital number means
right,
you're taking care of less and less on a percentage basis. So food for thought, maybe, and something we can look into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a handful of moving pieces on this, and I've been trying to process this. And I just, number one is, effectively the static number was locked in over a decade ago, right? So there's been no escalation of it, and yet everything we buy has increased in price. We see it in the police cars year after year. We see it each time we see a new pumper truck. It goes up by, they're separated by whatever, 7-8 years. They go up by 30%, right? So this number has not escalated, and it suddenly is feeling as though it may not be entirely workable. That's certainly one thing to revisit. There are some other mechanical issues as well. I mean, we're now doing $300,000 worth of roads every year out of the capital budget. That was never part of capital budget until 2019. So not only is this number fixed and not escalating with inflation, but we've actually lumped some big ticket cost items in here and taken them out of the operating budgets, which I think needs to be factored in as well. It's just creating sort of the pressure that we're seeing today. The third issue that I've sort of come to recognize is that, at least some of the grants that, we're assuming are coming back into capital are not necessarily coming back into capital. So, we're funding the full ask, assuming that, in fact, we're only fronting a portion of it, but we're actually out the full dollar amount, which I don't think really was factored into anybody's math. I'm not sure that was really anyone's intent. It just seems to be the way some of the financial flows are working. So.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, questions, or shall we wrap?
Move we adjourn.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, and I'll go across the screen here. Susan Franklin,
Aye.
Brian Host, aye. Michael Dick,
Michael Dick, aye.
Francine Lyons,
Aye.
Ralph Dormitzer.
Aye.
All right. The time is 9:07.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Good
Have a
job.
night. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.